Hi there, in this video we're gonna learn how to set up the emulator on our computer. Let's see how we can create our own virtual device on our computer. So now you might wonder, what is a virtual device? A virtual device is an Android device given to us by our computer. This simply means that the virtual device is a software that we use in order to run our Android applications on. In other words, a virtual device has almost all the capabilities of a real Android device. So now you might ask that, what are the benefits of using a virtual device? First and foremost, if you use a virtual device, you don't need a physical Android device. So if you don't own a physical Android device, guess what? You can still run your app on an Android virtual device. The second benefit of using a virtual device is that you can run your app on all sorts of Android devices. This means that, for example, you can run your app on Nexus 5, Nexus 6, Nexus S, or other Android devices. There is no limit to that. And the third benefit of using a virtual device is that you can run your app on multiple devices at the same time. So for example, if you have a messaging app, you can run your app on 2 devices at the same time and test the messaging capability of your app. So now it's time to run our Android app on a virtual device. But first, we need to determine whether we have an AMD or Intel CPU. If you have a Mac, then you have an Intel CPU or processor. And if you have a Windows machine, then you either have Intel or AMD processor. So on Windows, just go to the control panel and then go to the system. There you will find whether you have an Intel or AMD processor. As you can see, my processor type is Intel. So at this point, you should know that if you have an Intel CPU, you have the advantage of using the Haxam installer. The Haxam installer allows you to run your Android applications much more faster. Okay, so now just keep in mind your computer's CPU type and then go ahead and open your Android Studio. So if you open your Android Studio and you can see the Android Studio window here, you can go to Configure and then click on SDK Manager. But if you already have an Android project open, you can go to the top bar and then click on this icon that says SDK Manager. Alternatively, if you're using Mac, you can go to the Android Studio at the top and then click on Preferences. Next, go ahead and open the Appearance and Behavior and then go to the System Settings and then go ahead and click on Android SDK. And if you are using Windows, you need to go to the top menu and click on File and then click on Settings. And then you will be guided to this layout here, and then you can go to the Appearance and Behavior, System Settings, Android SDK. So at this point, you should know that if you want to close an opened project, just go to the top menu and click on File and then click on Close Project. Then you can see the main window of Android Studio. Okay, so now let's go ahead and click on this SDK Manager and open it here. So after opening the SDK Manager, just go ahead and click on this SDK Tools, and here you should see something named as Intel x86 Emulator Accelerator Haxam Installer. So if you have an Intel CPU, you should see this option. Make sure to check this checkbox here beside this Haxam installer and then click on Apply at the bottom and then just go through the installation process. So because I have already installed the Haxam installer, it doesn't allow me to install it again. But for example, I'm going to choose another package here and I'm going to click on Apply in order to show you how you can install a package. So I just selected this checkbox and then clicked on this Apply, and then here it's going to show me this dialog. I'm just going to click on OK, and here you can see that it's going to show me this window and it's going to download this package. So now it's time to create our virtual device. But before we can create our virtual device, we need something called a system image. So how we can get the system image? Here, just switch to the SDK Platforms tab and then check this checkbox that says Show Package Details. And here you can see the Android 9. We are going to target the Android 9. This means that we are going to test our applications using the Android 9 or Q. So here make sure that you have installed the Android SDK Platform 29, and here you might see something called System Image. So if you have an Intel CPU or processor, make sure that you install the Google Play Intel x86 Atom System Image. This is the package that you should install. And if you have an AMD processor, so here you can notice that under the Android Q, there is no system image for AMD processors. So what's the solution? Now you need to go ahead and get a system image from the older versions of Android operating system. So here, for example, under the Android 9 or Android P, there is no system image for AMD processors. So here I'm gonna scroll down here, and here we have something called Android 7.1.1 or Android Nougat. So here under this Android Nougat, you can see something called Google API's ARM EABI v7a system image. So if you have an AMD processor, you need to install this system image. So I'm just gonna check this checkbox, and then here at the bottom, the apply button is actually enabled, and I'm gonna click on it. So here you can see this window is gonna tell you what is going to be the storage that this system image is going to occupy. And then here, after reading this information, and after making sure that you're installing the correct system image, you can go ahead and click on OK, and then it's gonna install the system image on your computer. Okay, so after installing the required system image for the specific API, then you can close the SDK manager, and now you can have the Android Studio opened and then open your project. You need to open a project before you can create a virtual device, because here we're gonna use the AVD manager. In order to click on the AVD manager, here at the top bar, you can see this icon that says AVD manager or Android virtual device manager. Just click on it, and then you will be shown this window. So here, in order to create a virtual device, here you can see that I already have some virtual devices, but you might see an empty space here. Don't worry, we're gonna create a virtual device now. Here at the bottom, you can see this button that says create virtual device. I'm just gonna click on it, and first of all, we need to specify the category of our virtual device. You can have a TV or phone, Wear OS, or tablet. So in this course, we are going to mostly target the phone devices. So here I'm going to choose the phone, and then I'm going to specify the device that I'm going to create. For example, you can create a Pixel XL, Pixel 3 XL, or Nexus S, and all these other devices with different sizes. So here I'm going to choose, for example, the Pixel, and then I'm going to click on Next. And now it's gonna ask you to select a system image. So here we've got 3 tabs. The first tab is the recommended tab. So it's gonna recommend you some system images for the emulator that you want to create. So because I have already downloaded the system images that are compatible with my CPU or processor, it's showing me some of those system images under the recommended tab. So here I can choose the Android Q system image, Android Pie, or Android Oreo. So here, because we are going to target the Android Q in this course, the latest version of Android operating system, I'm gonna choose this system image. So here you can see that we've got 2 other tabs. The second tab is x86 images. So here you can download the specific system image for your Intel processor. So x86 is for Intel processors, okay? So how about the AMD processors? The third tab, Other Images, here you can find the specific system image for AMD processors, ARM EABI. So if you have an AMD processor, you can just download the system image that targets the API level 25 or Android Nougat. You can just click on this download button and go through the installation process. But here, I'm going to choose the Android Q system image and I'm going to click on Next. Now, here you can just change some of the settings of your emulator. I recommend that you leave these settings as default, but if you want to take a look at the other settings, just click on Show Advanced Settings and take a look at the other values here. And just click on Finish. So here is going to create the Android virtual device for us. So congratulations, our Pixel API 29 is now created. And here, I'm going to click on this Run button. Under the Actions tab, we've got this Run button. I'm going to click on it. Now we don't need the Android Virtual Device Manager anymore. I'm just going to close this window. So here we should wait. So it's going to start the virtual device for us. So now the virtual device is started. Now we can go ahead and run our Android app on the virtual device. So at the top bar, you can see this play button or run button. Just click on this run app button and then it's going to show you a window where you can choose a virtual device. So I'm going to choose this connected device Pixel API 29 and I'm going to click on OK. So here, let's open the virtual device. Now you can see that it's going to start running this application on our virtual device. Congratulations, you have successfully run your app on your virtual device. In the next video, we're gonna configure the Android Studio for better performance. I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.